and welcome over here to our traditional race reaction for the round 6 of the 2025 FIA Formula One World Championship, which took place in one of our favorite circuits, of course, the Miami International Autodrome, located on the outskirts of a great city of Miami in the Miami Gardens. And yeah, you know, it was a really great pulsating race, especially at the beginning, and then as it wore off, especially from the perspective of the Ferrari fans. So over here in this traditional race reaction, which I'm sure you guys are loving it, we will tell you everything about this race, why it panned out the way it did, and what we could have done, obviously, as Scuderia Ferrari to plant our beautiful Scarlet red Ferraris either on pole position, but especially to the top step of the podium to receive the trophy, which remember always travels in because the victory always travels in the Louis Vuitton. So that wonderful trophy, which is of course modeled after the Hard Rock Stadium, around which this great track winds its way, and it's a great track with great overtaking opportunities. That trophy maybe should have been in golden for the race winner. Obviously is designed in the style of the Hard Rock Stadium, and I do believe it really should have belonged to us. But yeah, to be honest, sometimes you are down and sometimes you just have to keep fighting, you have to keep supporting, because these are the moments that can really define you. Again, we do know that we had a difficult race, but we have to analyze it because it could have been much better. It's a bit of a pity that it wasn't, but hey, this is sometimes the way it goes, right? So over here, really busy weekend, in Miami, but a lot of great racing action. I definitely enjoy actually the sprint more than the actual Grand Prix, because obviously once the Grand Prix settled after about 10-15 laps, that was pretty much it. We knew, if there were no mistakes to be made, which cars were gonna finish where. But yeah, overall, after the sprint race, obviously with Hamilton third and Leclerc not even taking part, we were very excited about it, because we thought, look, we've got a great speed over here. But yeah, having definitely the worst qualifying of the year, Lewis Hamilton not making it into the Q3 for the first time in his Ferrari career. That's something that only happens to me maybe on a couple of occasions, each year, was the biggest, issue of it all, because, he also, I believe, didn't really, save any, for example, fresh set of the soft tires, or perhaps, having the mediums and hards. Yeah, that's great. They are slower tires though, and yeah, in the end, when it turned out to be a one-stopper race, you could actually maybe even do medium soft, which would be quicker, but most drivers, pick medium hard. So yeah, if you qualify 12, there's unless you have a 2 or 3 stop race, you do not have that advantage, which we wouldn't have anyway, if you say, for example, the set of the soft tires, which you could use, for example, for 15 or 20 lap long stints, tire stints, that is. For Charles Leclerc, he qualified 8th, so yeah, 8 and 12. This is not what we were looking for, here in Miami, but you sometimes have to accept it and work hard, because actually the gap to the leaders is much smaller than you would expect, because it was just pretty much half a second. Sometimes half a second, just a couple of years ago, or maybe even last year, would result in you looking up the second row, and now it means you're looking up what, 4th, 5th row. Yeah, so the Formula One's really nicely congested, and it was proven by the guy who's gotten the pole position. Obviously, Red Bull being on the pole position, that was a bit of a surprise. So everybody was very excited. I mean, you could see the huge VIP section, obviously lined with the swimming pools. Some of them in that white Ferrari fashion, the white kind of with the touch of that Miami blue fashion. Let me know again in the comments below how you like it. Well, I definitely prefer over here this Scuderia red Ferrari fashion, but I have to say, the white one looks very good, and the special editions for the sprint races. So the Shanghai edition for the Chinese Grand Prix, which obviously features the real Scuderia red Ferrari red, and obviously now with more of that Scuderia cherry red, not exactly that pure Ferrari red. That fashion, I do believe, looks again great. So these special editions give it a special feel. Obviously it is a sprint weekend, only the second sprint weekend of the season, and yeah, everybody was there in a VIP section expecting some fireworks, which we've gotten. Both Leclerc and Hamilton got good decent starts, but pretty much stayed where they were. And yeah, you could see Red Bull again, Verstappen pushing off Norris like that. Yeah, Norris, I think in this race we will see obviously how the 2025 season develops. What is definitely going to happen is that the next race is Imola. It is our home race, and we are definitely going to be aiming for a victory. And in Monaco, we've been running very, very well, and obviously with Charles Leclerc being the homeboy, we could well get a victory there. And from Spain, there will be lots of strict tests, especially on the movable parts of the wing, so that could definitely affect McLaren. So you could maybe this would be the last time that the orange cars, well, not really fashionable cars, right, had a really easy time during the race. Yeah, and it proved to be. But you could see the difference between Norris and Piastri, right? Norris just not exactly showing the highest racing IQ, by giving Verstappen the opportunity, to always, close off the outside. Kind of like when Montoya was fighting Michael Schumacher, that would remind me of that. Obviously, Michael Schumacher being much better driver than Max Verstappen. And yeah, that's how the race started, very quickly. Once Norris was pushed out, Piastri made his way to second. Then School Verstappen, who outbraked himself, got to the lead and won the race. And, Norris, after he finally pulled off the DRS move on Verstappen, which is, I guess, the safest, maybe the only way for him to really get ahead of Verstappen, who usually tends to school, Norris, then, they would have that orange one too. And that's a bit disappointing, right? For us, as Scuderia Ferrari, obviously, we were running well, we extended the stints, right? So, it was a steady race, but clearly we were lacking, a bit of tense here and there. I was hoping that either there was going to be a rain. That's a pity that shower, that there was even a threat of the suspension of the race, right? Right before it started, because there were thunderstorms in the area, but no, it stayed nice and dry throughout. But yeah, if the rain would have come, I believe, that would have suited us really, really well. We once again extended the stint. I believe that was the right strategy. So we had, for example, Leclerc running in fourth, Hamilton running in sixth. Then we split the strategy, starting obviously Leclerc on the mediums like most of the guys, and Hamilton, like his old teammate at Mercedes, Russell, started on the hard tire. So we knew that Russell and Hamilton were gonna go until like about lap 30, right? It's a 57 lap race, isn't it? So yeah, you pretty much have to get to around lap 32 to really then switch to the tires. That medium pit stop window is from about lap 19 to 25, and the drivers, they were really very of the rain, right? So we made just a little progress. For example, Hamilton got ahead of his Isaac Hadjar, who idolizes him relatively easily. After again, we had the restart over there, right? Obviously due to the safety car because of the collision in turn one between, I think, Lawson and Doohan. And then he has gotten Ocon, but it took him about 10 laps to overtake the Haas. So very slow progress, right? But then as it wore down, right, and again, both drivers, I think, did a great job with managing the tire wear. The pace was what it was, and then if we were 4th and 6th, and if the safety car, for example, would have come at the time, that would give us a really, really great advantage. As it went, the virtual safety car came out because Oliver Bearman's Haas just let go around that Miami Marina, so he pretty much had then nowhere, to place the car, out of the harm's way, because, in that Miami Marina, you are unsighted going through the turn, so you cannot just, have the car there and, having, for example, waved yellows. So from the virtual safety car standpoint, that obviously did help both of our drivers. So definitely Hamilton, gotten about 10 seconds, relatively cheap pit stop. Same for Russell and Leclerc. Just made it, even though that virtual safety car ended when he was still in the pit lane. So he didn't get much of an advantage. But yeah, then what happened is that you had Leclerc running on the hard medium and Hamilton on the medium, and Lewis Hamilton has caught up with Leclerc, right? Because surprisingly, we were fighting with the Williamses, so they qualified 6 and 7, and we are pretty much behind them. Carlos Sainz overtaking Leclerc, who didn't benefit from that virtual safety car, so he fell behind. Sainz, who overtook him with authority into turn one, but then Leclerc was obviously faster driver, right? So he then overtook Sainz, but with Sainz, I mean, yeah, it's great that he fights it, right? But sometimes he just compromises the races of the others. I guess it's that Red Bull mentality. He was the Red Bull junior driver, right? Let's just really fight very hard, kind of like Verstappen, but it just causes you lots of time. That's why we couldn't have finished higher, even maybe ahead of Sainz's teammate Albon. I think 5th and 6th was the best at that point what we could have done, because obviously Lewis Hamilton quickly caught up with the duo, almost overtook them as they fought into turn one. then got stuck behind Leclerc, and then, you know, that controversy, which is a little bit crazy over 7th place, was, you know, why didn't Leclerc just let Hamilton go, who was then on a fresher medium sense? Obviously, you got about half a second advantage, but they didn't last in the end. You could see the last 5 laps, Hamilton was struggling, you know, so it was critical that Leclerc would have let, you know, Hamilton go, or at least wouldn't find him hard, so Hamilton could overtake Antonelli and perhaps Albon, who are just, you know, roughly 3, 5, you know, 7, 10 seconds, you know, down the road. But, you know, again, you know, the Ferrari pit wall, they didn't want to make a decision. You know, Hamilton, very, very tough, obviously, telling them, hey, in China, I got off the way, you know, this is not a good teamwork. Obviously, obvious choice. Then told Leclerc, look, you know, you are on a slower tire, let Hamilton go. Yeah, but the funny thing was, when then Hamilton was in front, you know, Leclerc was able to stay within 2 seconds of him, and even gotten the DRS, you know, very, very quickly, as obviously his hard tires would, you know, fire up, and as the medium tires of Hamilton would lose grip, yeah, and as a result, you know, they then had to swap back. We were not able, you know, to improve on the position and finish 7 and 8. So I believe, you know, we really should have qualified, you know, higher. I do believe that if instead of being 8 and 12, for example, we were 4th and 8th, which was definitely possible, just a couple of tenths, you know, maybe different setup, I would be really curious to see, you know, what kind of setup exactly we run, because I figured out the low downforce is the way to go in Miami. So perhaps we were just getting maybe a bit too much, you know, wing, or too little of it, hard to say, you know. But again, you know, it does help down the straights. Like, look at the Williams cars, for example. They usually are running the low downforce, and they were flying over here. So that would be one thing. You know, the qualifying would have had to be better. You know, the virtual safety car would have helped us. I think starting both Leclerc and Hamilton on the hard tire and then switching to the medium would definitely be a preferred strategy, especially if you would have somebody like Leclerc, you know, being very close, you know, to the fight at the beginning. Maybe he could have been the one challenging Verstappen instead of Antonelli challenging Verstappen on lap 1, and if he would have gotten ahead, I don't believe, you know, that the Red Bull driver would have caught up, and, you know, we could have then built a lead of 5 to, you know, 10 seconds, you know, until Piastri would get ahead of Verstappen, who obviously was defending like his life depended on it. So that would be it. Some force majeure would also help us, like with the rain, but yeah, obviously this was a bit worrying because we expected a little bit more, and as you will see now on this Scuderia Red Retina iMac, you know, this is how the race finished, and yeah, it's a bit worrying, the gap, especially to the 2 leading cars. So let's take a look at it. So this is from my perspective, you know, how I saw the race. So yeah, yeah, so this is So how it finished, right? So you can see Oscar Piastri winning, you know, roughly 4 seconds there from Norris and Russell, 37 seconds behind. Yeah, it's definitely possible, you know, to catch up. I do believe, especially maybe not so much in Imola, even though I really hope so. And it also depends on the weather, but definitely from Monaco, from Spain, you know, the gap will never be like that again. But it's a bit worrying. 4th, Verstappen, then almost 40 seconds behind. 5th, Albon. You know, this is really where we should have been. 6th, Antonelli, Antonelli for Mercedes, almost minute behind. We finished minute behind, really. 7th, Charles Leclerc. 8th, Lewis Hamilton. You know, that infighting doesn't help over here, because if, you know, we are just 5th and 7th in the standing, who cares about few of the points? But yeah, we definitely, you know, needed to not be fighting with other cars or each other, but instead of, you know, maybe being right behind, you know, the orange cars would have helped us tremendously, and we perhaps could have definitely taken advantage of virtual safety car on the weather. 9 was then Carlos Sainz. 10, Yuki Tsunoda. Obviously Hamilton was setting fastest laps once he emerged on his mediums, so there was definitely potential. But yeah, this race was much more straightforward, not so much fun as the sprint was, which definitely was one of my favorite races so far this year. You know, we love the sprints. And over here, everybody, let's take a look at how the Drivers' Championship looks like at the moment, and as a result of the round 6 of the Miami Grand Prix, and how it looks like at the 1/4 stage, you know, which is really, you know, quite interesting. Oscar Piastri maintains and extends his lead, 131 points. Second, we then have Lando Norris with 115 points. Yeah, he's getting beaten by his much younger teammate in terms of the race starts, even though they are similar of age. Third, Max Verstappen, the reigning champion, 99 points. Didn't even get to 100 in the first 4th of the season. 4, George Russell, 93 points, much closer to Verstappen now. fifth. Charles Leclerc, 53 points. So, yeah, that gap is now 40 points. So that's a bit worrying. But hey, you know, after Monaco, we can be right on Russell's and Verstappen's tail. 6, Andrea Kimi, Antonelli, 48 points. 7, Lewis Hamilton, 41 points. Again, with better Ferrari strategy, better qualifying, you know, he could have been ahead of Antonelli. Because obviously, you know, if you just finish ahead of him, that would be the change of 2 points that you gain. He would lose 2 points, so at least 4 points there. So he's almost there. 8 is then Alexander Albon, 30 points. Had a very strong race, you know, finishing obviously 5th. 9, Esteban Ocon, 14 points. 10, Lance Stroll, 14 points. 11, Yuki Tsunoda, 9 points. You know, poor race by the Red Bull driver, only 10th. 12, Pierre Gasly, 7 points. 13, Carlos Sainz, 7 points. He must be really upset, obviously. He was 5th. Then his teammate overtook him, and then, you know, the 2 cars from the team that he was unceremoniously not extended the contract of Scuderia Ferrari. But did well. 14, Nico Hülkenberg, 6 points. 15, Oliver Bearman, 6 points. 16 is then Isaac Hadjar, 5 points. Then 17, Fernando Alonso, 0 points. 18, Liam Lawson, 0 points. 19, Jack Doohan, 0 points. 28, Gabriel Boltoretto, 0 points. So that will be a bit of a psychological blow to the final 4 drivers in his championship, still not having points despite having pretty much 8 races, 6 Grand Prix and 2 sprints. This is the team's championship, so the Constructors' Championship. At the moment, McLaren leading with 246 points. Second, Mercedes, 141 points. Red Bull still ahead of us, third, 105 points. But we are right on their tail. Fourth, Scuderia Ferrari, 94 points. We should really be in the 100s. And after the home race at the Autodrome Internazionale Enzo Edino Ferrari, we will be there. Fifth, Williams, 37 points. Most courtesy, obviously 30 points courtesy of Albon. That's a huge surprise. 6, Haas, 20 points. 7, Aston Martin, 14 points. All courtesy, obviously, of Lance Stroll. That's another huge surprise. 8, Racing Bulls, 8 points. There is no change at the back because 9 Alpine still have 7 points. 10, Kick Sauber has 6 points. So this is how the Constructors' Championship looks like. Definitely we expected more, and this is the Drivers' Championship, and this is obviously how the race finished. So yeah, you know, Piastri, wow, 3 victories, you know, on the trot consecutively. So definitely not what we were expecting. We were really hoping we would be celebrating here in Miami. You know, there are so many fans, obviously, of Scuderia Ferrari. You know, America is our biggest market. Thankfully, we will still go to Austin, Las Vegas 3 times, obviously, this year. But yeah, this was, if you don't count, obviously, China and obviously Australia, that was, you know, due to the weather. That was, for example, you know, due to very tough regulations, you know, yeah, very disappointing, the worst race in terms of, you know, just how far ahead from the leaders we were. But yeah, you know, sometimes you hit the button and the only way is up, right? So this was the race reaction. I hope you enjoyed. You know, let me know again, you know, how did you feel about the race? You know, I did enjoy the scenery. You know, the podium is magnificent, the swimming pools, you know, great, nice fashion. You know, it was great to see, for example, drivers being interviewed, right? On the way from, obviously, going from the checkered flag start, finish straight from the Parc Fermé to the podium, because it's, you know, quite, you know, when you always say drive it, it's about 15-20 seconds, but it's almost whole sector 1 that you have to cover, which is, you know, over 1 kilometer. So, you know, that was pretty nice, because again, everybody, you know, could see the drivers being interviewed. You know, when you are sometimes in Parc Fermé, the fans can hardly see you, only on a big board, right? You know, we've been to F1 race before. So, yeah, that was a great touch over there. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the Miami Grand Prix. You know, I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice, interesting race. Definitely also from the strategic point of view. But yeah, now it's time to recharge our batteries again, you know, and, you know, find out a bit more speed, upgrade the car, make it faster, because the next race, the round 7 of the championship is, oh yay, the Ferrari's home race at the Autodrome Internazionale Enzo Edina Ferrari. I love saying it. I'm sure all the tifosi, maybe even most of the tifosi from the Miami will be there. You know, everybody will be there. Obviously, you know, the board, right? You know, the fans, the whole family. So we are really looking forward to it. And yeah, who knows, you know, I'm pretty sure, you know, we will be aiming at least for a podium, and at least to finally break the duck and win the real Grand Prix race, not just the sprint race this season. I cannot wait for it. Well, we will have 14 days to wait for it, so a lot of time to prepare. And then we will go for a second triple header of the season at some of the favorite cities, starting with our home race in Imola, then going to Monaco. Obviously, we've been there. Charles Leclerc will be aiming, to win it for the second time, and then finishing off at Barcelona, which is the place where we race a real Ferrari Spider race car. It's gonna be amazing, right? Exactly. And yeah, if we can top it up with 3 dominant victories, we will be right in a title fight. So this was round 6 of the 2025 FIA Formula One World Championship. Now you guys, let's enjoy the great tropical scenery of Miami as the spring is slowly gonna be changing into summer soon. And we will see you very soon. This was Jan, the Smiling Sun Champion and Ferrari's biggest fan. Forza Ferrari, let's go! We are a bit down, but we will not give up. We haven't won in Miami, but what is surely coming very soon is a Ferrari victory.